Hey guys, and welcome back to the Coder's Legacy channel. In this video, we'll take a look at operator overloading in Python. Operator overloading is a rather interesting and powerful concept in programming that unfortunately not too many people know about. It's something that people don't really take advantage of, and not usually, and they have to resort to alternative techniques that aren't very efficient, and they often end up running into errors. Okay, operator overloading is a simple and elegant solution to all of this, and it's something that makes good logical sense. Okay, it's not complicated at all. Okay, and yeah, that's what we'll be taking a look at today. Before I properly describe operator overloading, we'll take a look at a small example first that'll clearly show you why we need operator overloading and where we need it. Okay, so before we actually begin, I hope you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like, okay, to support the channel. All right, and let's go ahead and begin. So I'll create this class called data, okay, and then I'll create the init function for it, okay, and we'll take in a parameter called n, okay, or we'll just call it data. Then I'll create this variable in here called self.value and give it that parameter. Okay, this is pretty simple so far. I've just created a simple class and it has a single member variable called self.value. Okay, now what I want to do is create an object for it. I'll call it d1. Okay, so here we go. I made this object, and I'll create another one called d2 as well. All right. So what I want to do now is that I want to basically add these two data objects. Okay, what I want to do is add data1, d1, and I want to add d2. So what happens when I do this? So I want to create this new variable called d3 and then store d1 and d2 in it, the sum of d1 and d2. Okay, and let me try running this code and let's see what happens. Okay, look. It says unsupported operand type for plus. Okay, this is the plus operator. Okay, keyword is operator over here. Okay, and then there's data and data. Okay, so it's saying that it cannot add these two. It cannot add objects of this type. Okay, so this is a problem, and I'm sure many of you have faced errors like this before. Another very common error is this. Let's say you want to print out d1. Okay, now what this does is prints out this thing over here, which basically is information about the object. Now, is this any use to you? Is this what you wanted? No. Chances are what you wanted was to have the value printed out, which is like 5. You wanted that printed out, but that's not what happened because the operator behavior is something else. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing here. If you're familiar with the concept of overloading, which is something that's also present in functions, it's a concept called function overloading. You can check that out in the description below. I've left a link down there. It's also a very fascinating concept. So basically over here, what we need to do is overload our operators. And if you don't already know, overloading basically means to redefine in a sense. Okay, we need to redefine the behavior for the plus operator. So if I want this to work, okay, what I need to do is rewrite our addition function, which is basically going to be done like this. This is a predefined function. So now all we need to do is adjust the parameters a bit. Okay, so I'm going to do self, obviously, and then the second parameter is going to be the object with which we're adding it. Okay, now this is a bit tricky to explain, but basically whenever you add an object into another object, okay, whether it be a custom class like data or it be an integer or whatever, there's the addition function called, okay, this function that you see right here, okay, and it takes as parameter whatever you're adding into it. So in this case, d1 plus d2, what you're basically doing is something like this. Okay, d1 and you're calling the plus function on it and you're taking as parameter d2. This is what it kind of looks like behind the scenes. Okay, following that thought process, we end up with these kind of parameters. So basically what we need to do is return a data object. Okay, or basically let me first do this step by step. Okay, self.value plus object.value. Okay, because remember, we can't add two data classes together, but we can add two integer classes together. Okay, two integer objects, the self.value for d1 and the object.value for d2. So let's just see what happens. Okay, and there we go, 13 was printed out, the sum of 5 and 8. Okay, now let's take this a step further and return a data object. Okay, so for example, if I do d3 is equal to d1 plus d2, then this should work. Okay, done, because this returned a data object which went into d3. But now I want to find out the value of d3, and for that I need to do this. Okay, so we now see the value 13 out there. But what if I just want to do this? What if I want to do this and I want to see the value for the object? Well, for that, what I can do is overload the str function over here, okay, which basically comes up with a string representation of it. Okay, that's what str stands for, string. It'll come up with a string representation to it, which is basically what the print function uses. Okay, because it needs a string version of the object to basically display. So as long as I overload this, then our object will be printed out properly. Watch. What I want to return is self.value, but not just self.value. I want to return a string version of str.value. Okay, now see what happens. There we go, it works. See, even though I'm just doing it like this and not doing this, it's working perfectly. See, this is basically the beauty of operator overloading. Okay, and there's much more we can do. Okay, let's just go ahead and take a look at one or two more before we end this. Okay, so there's less than. Okay, let's go ahead and overload these as well. And there's also greater than. Okay, and yeah, now what I want to do in less than, let's just do this. If d1 is less than d2, then print out d1 was smaller. Okay, otherwise print out, or let's just go ahead and explicitly write this. Okay, d2 is less than d1, or d1 is greater than d2. Okay, then say d2 was larger. Okay, and otherwise, or let's just stick to these two. Okay, now what happens here is that this is the less than operator, okay, which is basically this. Okay, this thing you see over here. Now what I want to do is compare these two. So what I'm going to do is, if okay, I think we can do this in one line. All I need to do is self.value is less than object.value. There we go. And I do the same thing over here, but this. Okay, there we go. Now if I run this, we see d1 was smaller, which is indeed the case. So if I change this to like 9, there, d2 was larger. So this is basically how we do things in operator overloading. I just overloaded 4 operators in front of you, and we can now see what's going on. Okay, like this, there are like 20 to 30 different operators that we can overload. I have a link to my website in the description below, which has a complete list of all of them. Okay, a complete list of all operators, you know, that can be overloaded and what their function names are. Okay, you can find that all over there, so go ahead and check that out. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's the main content. Okay, and just one more thing I want to mention is that there doesn't have to be just one, you know, not just one variable. There can be more than that. So there can be like a name, for instance. Okay, so I can just store this in here and everything works perfectly fine. Yeah, sorry about that. I can call this 1 and I can call this 2. Okay, so it all works the same way. And this is interesting because operator overloading allows us to do things based off of certain variables. So for example, you could in the less than, in the greater than, you could basically compare it using the names. Okay, like if you want to sort them in alphabetical order or something, you could use those operators. You can use these operators to basically compare the strings instead. Okay, you can actually do this. And let me just do this. Okay, and it says D1 was smaller. Okay, and the reason for that is because 1 is less than 2. Okay, and I believe it's not actually comparing these numerically, it's just comparing these based off ASCII codes. So for example, if I do B and if D2 is A and D1 is B, D2 should be larger. Okay, a little confusing, but I'm getting lost there. But basically, you get the point, right? This is basically operator overloading. This is how it works, and how you use it is up to your imagination. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you guys subscribe to the channel and leave some likes, leave some feedback. Okay, and I guess I'll see you guys in a later video.